Hi, seventh graders. Welcome to Chapter 1, Lesson 2, Adding Integers. This is the solutions to pages 12 and 13. Remember, you should be here if you need a little assistance through some of the questions through pages 12 and 13, or if you have finished the 2 pages and you just want to go over your solutions. Otherwise, please turn the video off and complete your assignment before you watch this video. Okay, so the first chunk of assignment I asked you to work on is to complete numbers 1 through 7. Number 1, how do you find the additive inverse of an integer? And to do that, you're just going to take the opposite of the integer. For example, if you had 30, oops, let me go here. If you had 30, the additive inverse would be negative 30. Okay, for number 2, is 3 plus negative 4 the same as negative 4 plus 3? Well, if we take a look at this, plus negative 4. Now, if I take this guy and write it here, plus take this guy and write it here, is that still the same thing? And the answer to number 2 is yes. We're pretty much using the commutative property. I just moved these 2 numbers around. The 4 stays negative and the 3 stays positive. So yes, all we're doing is using the commutative property to move the 3 and the negative 4. Okay, for number 3, tell whether the sum is positive, negative, or 0 without adding. Explain your reasoning. Okay, so for number 3, the solution is going to be positive, and the reason is 20 gives you a larger absolute value than negative 8. Number 4, the solution is 0 because the 2 numbers are inverses of each other. When you add inverses of each other, your answer will always equal 0. You have $30. In addition to that, you spend $30. You have $0 left. And for number 5, the solution is going to be negative. Since both signs are the same, we add and keep the sign. Okay, for 6 and 7, we're going to tell whether the statement is true or false, and we have to explain. So for number 6, the question says the sum of 2 negative integers is always negative. Well, if we go back and take a look at number 5, if we take a look at negative 10 plus negative 18, we got negative. And the reason is if both of the signs are the same, you add and keep their common sign. So number 6 is true. And to explain, it's exactly what I just said. When you add 2 negatives, you add and keep the sign. Okay, number 7, an integer and its absolute value are always opposite. This is sometimes true, but the question says true or false. So this has to be false because it doesn't always present a true solution. It's false because if you have an integer, say 3, and you take its absolute value, you still get 3. You know, the statement written in integer and its absolute value are opposites. That's only true when you use, for example, negative 3, and then you take the absolute value and you get 3. So unfortunately, that's not always true, so we have to say false. Okay, moving forward. For this section, we had to complete 8 to 22 evens. All right, so let's take a look at number 8. We have 6 plus 4. We simply have 2 positive numbers, so 6 plus 4 equals 10. Okay, number 10, we have negative 2 plus negative 3. Since the signs are both negatives, we're going to add the 2 and the 3 to get 5. And we're going to keep the common sign, which is negative. They both share a negative sign. Number 12, we have 5 plus negative 7. So for number 12, what we're going to do is ignore the signs and just take the bigger number minus the smaller number. We're simply going to take 7 and minus 5 to get 2. Okay, then the next thing we're going to do is ask ourselves, who will give us a bigger absolute value, the 5 or the 7? And of course, 7 will give us a bigger absolute, so we keep this sign in the answer, negative. Okay, let's go to number 14. Number 14 is very similar to number 12. I have two different signs. I have a positive 9 and a negative 11. So I'm going to forget the signs for now and simply subtract bigger minus smaller. 11 minus 9 is 2. So I'm going to write a 2 here. And now ask yourself, who will give me a bigger absolute, the 9 or the 11? So since 11 will give you a bigger absolute value, we're going to keep this sign, which is negative. Okay, let's go to number 16 here. In number 16, if you notice, both of these signs are negative. We are adding a negative 4 and a negative 16. So we're going to keep the common sign and add to get 20. Okay, number 18, we have 14 plus negative 5. So once again, we have two different signs. So just like number 14 or number 12, when the signs are different, we're going to subtract. So I'm going to take the larger number and subtract the smaller number. So 14 minus 5 is 9. So I'm going to put a 9 here. And now I'm going to look and see who will give me a bigger absolute, the 14 or the 5. So since 14 is positive and it gives us a bigger absolute value, my answer stays positive. Okay, now let's take a look at number 20. In number 20, we have a negative 10 and a negative 15 being added together. So what we're going to do is add these two and keep the common sign. So it's going to be negative 10 plus 15 equals negative 25. Let's clean this up here. Okay, and number 22, we have 18 plus negative 18. Okay, it's very important to be aware of inverses, so you're not spending time adding and subtracting and just using up time you really don't need to be using to solve some of these questions. When you see inverses of each other, they're automatically 0. They're not positive 0, no negative 0, just 0. Okay, if you need to review any of these examples, please go back. If there's any of these giving you trouble, highlight them. Make a note somewhere on your sheet so we can go over them when we have some time together. Okay, 26 and 27. The temperature is negative 3 degrees at 7 in the morning. During the next 4 hours, the temperature goes up. It increases 21 degrees. So what's the temperature at 11 o'clock? So I'm going to draw you a number line here. I'm going to pause. I'll be right back. Okay, so I drew a number line. I went from negative 3. I didn't put all the numbers in. It would just take way too much time. So here's negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0. And then I counted every 5. So 5, 10, 15, 20. So the question says we're starting at negative 3. We are starting all the way down here. And we are increasing by 21. So what we're going to do is go towards the right and count 21 sections. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So to figure out that number, here's 15, 16, 17, 18. So what is the temperature at 8 a.m.? 18 degrees. Now there's another way we can do this. So if you need to copy this down, pause the video, copy the number line down. I'm going to show you another way. What this is really saying is let's take negative 3 and add 21 to it. Okay, so since the signs are different, we're going to ignore the signs here for a minute and subtract. Okay, 11 minus 3 is 8. Bring down. Now, who will give me a bigger absolute value, the 3 or the 21? Hopefully, you're saying 21. So my final answer is 18 degrees. Okay, for number 27, your bank account has a balance of negative $12. That means you owe the bank $12 just to get your account balance to 0. You deposit. Remember, a deposit is a positive thing. You're adding to your account $60. So what is your new balance? So it's negative 12 plus $60. So remember, from this $60, you're going to have to pay that $12. So since the signs are different, we subtract bigger minus smaller. Okay, let's borrow. 10 minus 2 is 8. 5 minus 1 is 4. So since 60 gives us a bigger absolute value than negative 12, my final solution is $48. Okay, again, anything that gives you trouble, make sure you're making note. Okay, for the next section, we're going to complete just the evens, so 28 to 38 evens. So let's begin. So we have 9 plus 6 plus negative 6. Now you need to remember, in addition, you don't have to necessarily go from left to right. You can, but when I look at these two numbers here, I know those are additive inverses. They go to 0. So my solution to 28 without doing any math is 9. I'm just going to start an answer column here. Okay. Number 30, we have 9 plus negative 17 plus negative 9. So look at this. If I take 9 and add negative 9 to it, I hope you can see that they're inverses of each other. So this cancels this out, leaving me with just negative 17. Okay, let's take a look at number 32. So 32, we have negative 12 plus 25 plus negative 15. So there's numerous ways to do this. Most students like to just start at the negative 12 and add 25 to it, and then figure out their answer and then go to negative 15. What I like to do is take the two numbers that have the same signs and add them together because it's basic addition. So 12 plus 15 is 27. So since they're negatives, I have negative 27 plus 25. And what I'm going to do next, since the two signs are different, I'm going to take 27 and I'm going to subtract 25. So when the signs are different, subtract. Okay, that gives me an answer of 2. Who gives me a bigger absolute value, the 27 or the 25? Hopefully you're saying 27, and since it's negative, my final solution is negative 2. Okay, so number 32 is negative 2. If you want to go left to right, you can. Okay, that's just another way. It's not right or wrong. I'm just trying to show you some of the quicker ways to get through these. So that was 32. Let's take a look at 34. Okay, so for 34, we have 13 plus negative 21 plus 16. So if you notice for this question, I have a positive here and a positive here. So I'm going to mash those two together. I'm going to add them up and keep them positive. So 16 plus 13 is 29. So I'm going to take 29 and add to it negative 21. Now take a look at the problem you have. I have a positive and a negative. So when the signs are different, at this point, I have to subtract. So I'm going to take 29 and subtract 21, and I get an answer of 8. Now ask yourself, which of these two numbers gives you a bigger absolute value, the 29 or the 21? Hopefully you're saying 29, so my final answer is simply 8. Okay, that was 34. Let's take a look at 36. Okay, 36 we have negative 13 plus 27 plus negative 18. So once again, for this problem, I see two numbers that have negatives, 1 and 2. So I'm going to put those together because they have the same signs. I can just add them right up. So I'm going to take 13 and 18 and add them up. So 8 and 3. And then that gives us 31. So since both of these are negatives, I'm going to keep the sign. So now we're going to take negative 31 and add 27 to it. So if you notice, the signs are now different. So we're going to subtract, take 31 and subtract 7. So let's borrow. 11 minus 7. Hopefully you're saying 4, and that goes to 0. So now we look and say who gives us a bigger absolute value, the 31 or the 27. Hopefully you're saying 31, so we keep the negative sign. So for number 36, the solution is negative 4. Okay, let's take a look at 38. 38, we have negative 32 plus negative 17 plus 42. Okay, this is kind of nice because my two negatives are right next to each other. So I'm just going to add those up. I'm going to take 32 and 17 and add them up. 7 and 2 is 9. 3 plus 1 is 4. So I'm going to add and keep the sign since they're both negatives. Okay, and I'm going to take negative 49 and add 42 to it. Okay, so at this point, I have one negative, one positive. That means I have to subtract them from each other. Okay, that gives me 7. And now I determine the sign. Who gives me a bigger absolute value, the 49 or the 42? And hopefully you're saying 49, so I keep the negative. So final solution to 38 is negative 7. All right, there you are. So we're now going to the next page. If there's anything that gave you trouble, please be sure you make note and we will talk about it. Here's a little funny meme for you. Okay, we're going to do 40 to 48 all. I have all the questions split on a couple slides, so it's not overwhelming to look at. So for number 40, we're going to take a look at this diagram here of lithium ion. And the question says, a lithium atom has positively charged protons and negatively charged electrons. The sum of the charges represents the charge of the lithium atom. Find the charge of the atom. So what it's pretty much asking us to do is take all the negatives and positives and add them together. So I see 3 negatives here, so that represents negative 3, plus I see 3 positives in there. And hopefully you can recognize these as additive inverses. So my answer to number 40 is 0. Negative 3 plus 3 equals 0. Okay, for 41, write 2 integers with different signs that have the sum of negative 25, and write 2 integers with the same signs that have a sum of 25. Okay, one example would be negative 26 plus 1 to equal negative 25. Sorry. And another example would be with the same signs, negative 24 plus negative 1 equals negative 25. I'm not sure what this extra line is that keeps coming up. Okay, they don't have to be for 41, these numbers. They can be any numbers as long as we have two different signs and two of the same signs that give us a final answer of negative 25. So moving forward, 42 to 44, we're going to evaluate the expression. Evaluate means to find a solution, okay, to solve. It's very important you understand your vocab words. All right, there you go. So for 42, we're going to take the value of A and add it to the value of B. So blank plus blank. And on those blank lines, we're going to put whatever A and B are. So A is worth 4 plus B is worth negative 5. So what you're going to do is subtract them because the signs are different. Take the bigger minus the smaller. So you get 1. Now who gives you a bigger absolute value, the 4 or the 5? Okay, the 5 does, so I keep the negative. So final answer is negative 1. You need to make sure for these questions you're showing the work that I'm showing you here, because the steps in the process is just as important as the solutions. Okay, for 43, we have negative B plus C. So if we take a look at B, it's already negative. So we're going to just write it this way. That's B plus C. So what happens in here is it's telling you to take the opposite of negative 5. So what is the opposite of negative 5? So this becomes 5 plus negative 8. Okay, so this is what we're solving right here. So take a look, signs are different. We subtract, we take bigger minus smaller, we get 3. And now we take a look, who gives us a bigger absolute value, the 5 or the 8? Hopefully you're saying the 8, so I keep its sign. Final solution is negative 3. 43 is the question most students dislike because of that negative outside. But that negative outside, just like the absolute value, I know we did this in the last lesson. When we had the negative outside, what we did first is ignore the negative, take the absolute value, and then carry the negative over. All right, the only reason why it's a little different here is that there is no absolute value bar. It's telling you still to take the opposite of what's in there. So the opposite of negative 5 is 5. Okay, 44 is a wonderful question. Okay, it's in absolute value. So absolute value of A plus B plus C. So what we're going to do is add everything up in here first and then take the absolute value. So A is 4, B is negative 5, and C is negative 8. Okay, so let's begin. What I'm going to do is add the two negatives together. So 4 plus, I'm going to take 8 and 5 and add it together. 8 and 5, I get 13. Since they're both negatives, I keep the negative. Okay, absolute value. Now, when I take a look inside, I notice that I have one positive and one negative, and that means we subtract. I'm going to take 13, subtract 4. Okay, 13 minus 4 is 9. And who gives us a bigger absolute value, the 4 or the 13? Hopefully you're saying the 13, so I keep the negative. So this whole thing is absolute value of negative 9. What is the absolute value of negative 9? And that equals 9. So the final answer to number 44 is 9. Okay. Let's move on. We're going to use mental math to solve the equation below. So for number 45, we need a number that we could add to 12, so I get an answer of 2. So if I already have 12, This number here has to be a negative number in order for me to get 2. So what do I need to take away from 12 to get to 2? And we need to take away 10. So that means this number needs to be negative 10. So my solution for 45 is negative 10. For 46, let's do this. For 46, we have a number plus negative 2 is equal to 0. So what do you know about a number plus another number equals 0? This number has to be what to that number? And hopefully you're saying inverses, opposites. So this number needs to be 2. So our answer here is 2. All right, and let's take a look at 47. We have negative 8 plus something to give us negative 15. So our negative is getting smaller. So what could I add to this to make my solution negative 15? And I hope you are saying negative 7. Okay. Let's take a look at 48. Starting at point A, the path of a dolphin jumping out of the water is shown. So here's point A. The dolphin jumps out of the water 24 feet. I'm assuming it's feet. And then comes back down and goes under at point C to negative 18 feet, comes back out of the water at a positive 15 feet above the water, and then jumps back into the water and goes down 13 feet. So part A is asking us, is the dolphin deeper at point C or point E? Okay, so where's the dolphin deeper, at point C or at point E? And hopefully you can see that part C, he's at a deeper depth in the ocean than he is at E. And then for part B, is the dolphin higher at B or D? So is the dolphin higher at B or D? So he is much higher out of the water at point B.